Thank you so much for coming today, and we're really excited to interview you. So let's get started with the questions. So you've done amazing work in Adobe as well as during your PhD at MIT. Could you talk more about how your work has changed or stayed the same, transitioning from industry and research?
Sure. Well, I have this lucky case of my research, the research that I did during the PhD, being very much in line with what the company does. So it's really relevant to the company's bottom line, like what are the product offerings that they have. So I've worked on human visual attention and saliency and applications to graphic design, and image processing applications. And in general, if you're working on image processing or you're working on user understanding, in my cases, I worked on both. Those are relevant to tech companies. And so I got to keep working on the problems that I found most interesting during my PhD. I got to keep working on them as a research scientist at Adobe. So from that perspective, the research topics, not much has changed. What has changed is the types of people that I work with. So when you are in academia, say if you're a student, you're working with other students, you're working with professors. If you're a professor, you're working with mostly your own students and potentially collaborating with other professors and their students. But when you're in industry, you're kind of working across the company and you're working with colleagues for the most part, which is really nice. So this has really cool advantages of learning from your equals in different areas. So I can work with user experience researchers and designers and product managers and engineers, and we can use everyone's unique abilities in kind of putting projects together, which is really exciting. You have resources that you don't necessarily have in academia.
Awesome, that's really interesting. Also, your master's thesis in the computational understanding of image memorability seems super interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about what makes an image memorable and how you apply this to designing advertisements, for example?
Sure. So memorability is a general direction of research in one of my PhD labs. So I was co-advised by Aude Oliva, and if you look her up, you'll see a lot of really cool papers in this space. From computer science to neuroscience, we looked at different aspects of the problem, and just memorability alone, I think I could talk to you for hours about. We're writing up a book chapter to summarize the area. I can link to it later if you want. But maybe at a very high level, the way to think about memorability is, well, we have this like working theory within the group that you remember what has high utility of information for you. What does that mean? That means you're going to remember things that are going to be useful for you to act in the world. So you're more likely to remember scenes, for instance, with people in it, or social interactions, or objects that you can interact with, because they will kind of help you going forward, right? There are aspects of the world that you need to take in kind of with more attention, and then you will learn from that information going forward. So what we see in our experiments, in our memorability experiments across large populations of people, is that people really key on to other humans and images. So that those are going to be the most memorable images, ones containing people. Indoor scenes are less memorable than that if they don't have people, but they're still much more memorable than natural scenes. And we found that natural scenes, no matter how beautiful, aesthetics is not correlated to memorability. You tend to compress almost these images in your brain. Every mountain image, you'll appreciate its beauty, but it'll look like every other mountain image you've seen before, and you're not going to encode it with as much detail. You're asking about applications. Applications to advertising. I guess I haven't worked in advertising, and I'm sure that advertising really cares about, how to make things memorable. I think something that advertisers already know is, you put people in advertisements or on campaigns, and that'll draw the attention of the viewer to that. You see a lot of that. I guess what there's not an answer to is whether that people actually maintain the connection to the product being advertised. Like, you'll remember you've seen this image with this person and this object before, but do you remember what it was advertising? I'm not sure. I don't have a firm answer for you. But I think in terms of applications, what's been most exciting to me is information presentation or communication. And I think that's maybe more relevant to PhD students and academics. So what does that mean? We looked at, we had papers on, what makes visualizations more memorable. If you're presenting data in visualization form, like charts or, bars and graphs, how do you present it in a more memorable and effective way? Well, it turns out that if you have, say, visual depictions of your concepts, if you have country names, then you have those country flags as well. Or if it's about a particular topic, can you visualize that topic as part of that data? And that ends up making those visualizations more visually memorable, but people also encode more content and information about it, which is really cool. So, if you want to walk away with an application or a takeaway from our, work on memorability as it can apply to you, it's add, more visual content to your presentations, to your graphs. It does help people encode it better. It draws their attention to it in the first place, but it also allows them to store it away and then kind of retrieve it at a later time.
Yeah, super interesting. And I'll keep that in mind when making presentations. So, while some designers might be concerned about their job being taken over by AI, how do you balance full automation for design and keeping the designer in the loop?
Well, sure. So there's a lot of discussion right now about, are you going to get rid of creativity as humans know it, and are you going to replace it with machines? And I think the way to think about it is that, that's not necessarily what we're after. What we're after is arming designers with more powerful tools that they can work with. So what we're automating is not the creativity. And I mean, that's a bigger philosophical question of whether you can do that. But what we're trying to automate is the kind of the repetitive or the redundant steps that designers have to do, right, in their workday. So we want to free them to do more of the intellectually stimulating creative work. So let me give you some concrete examples. Like things that designers do a lot is laying out assets on a page, but then they're really tweaking kind of they're doing these minor adjustments to make sure everything lines up and looks balanced, and they're making sure that colors are being reused appropriately. Those are things that are pretty straightforward to automate. There's still work to be done about more automated layouts, but in the end, the designer is really the curator. Even if you're generating automatic layouts for them, a human still needs to look at them and decide whether it achieves the goal they wanted it to achieve. That requires a higher level kind of thinking than you could program a machine to do, at least at this moment. So think about the AI going forward as creating more advanced tools and not limit the designers to the current tools that they're working with. There's another example in this space, which is designers do a lot of retargeting, like they have one design format for one display. Maybe they created a poster, but then they need to create many different versions of the same design for different aspect ratios, for different devices, for different places. Like you might want to take the same advertisement and put it like in a banner of a web page or on the side or in a small thumbnail. That's, at that point, the designer they have a picture of what it should look like, and then redesigning for all these new aspect ratios is much less exciting to them. It's very brute force work of like tweaking the alignments and figuring out if it could be squished and fit into this new aspect ratio. So that's very open for AI automation. And it's not a trivial problem. You have to figure out which assets to keep or throw out, how to resize them, but it's not as creative a problem as creating the first design. So that's still going to be left up to the designer.
Yeah, these are all really good points. So, what are some products that you envision in the intersection of human perception and computer vision fields?
Some other well, I think about this a lot these days, right? How you can apply perception and cognition and insights from those areas into product design. And I think if I told you everything I thought about, there'd be some probably some trade secrets in there. But I think broadly speaking, eh, perception and cognition is about how people parse, process, let's leave it to visual content because that's my expertise, but let's say visual content. It could be photographs, it could be graphic designs, it could be documents. How knowing how people parse them, where they look, what they remember, what they choose to encode and retrieve and think about, how kind of looking at that content makes them act, like all those aspects, they should be massively relevant, right, to products. Think about like perceptually motivated image processing applications. If you know where someone's going to look or what they're going to remember, you can tailor the content to that, right? You can do smarter summarization or cropping or captioning, you name it. The idea is focus on what counts to humans. So if you understand humans, you know what counts, or what matters to them, and you can use that to prioritize how you process that content. I hope that's not too abstract, but it gives you a good sense of how I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, definitely. Like keeping the human center is like one of the most essential things of like creating products. Yeah. So I guess switching gears, like what excites you most about your work going forwards?
So if you're thinking broad themes, I mean, I can give you specifics about my work, but broad themes, as an industry researcher, impact matters a lot. And to me personally and to the company that I'm part of. So um, you know who are we creating things for? And it's something you might not think as much about in academia necessarily. Depends on the field or the topics that you're working on, but industry is really going beyond the paper. So we as researchers within industry, we write papers. That's part of what we do, right? We also come up with new ideas. We turn them into projects, we write them up. But being in industry, we don't move on once the paper is written. Not always, right? We want to take that paper and conceptualize it into something that, well, hopefully would make it easier for someone to do something, right? And that's how many of those someones, that's your, the scale of your impact. So ideally you want to be working on things that a lot of people are going to care about, because it's going to make something easier or better for them. So that's most exciting. And I can give you an example of that, but maybe I'll kind of give you the other themes, which is the roles. I'm excited about the roles that you can have within, say, a company, because you get to wear different hats. If you want to, you can wear different hats depending on what project you're doing, and that's my experience right now. So you come into something as a researcher, but you emerge maybe as a project leader or product leader. Maybe you end up having to think about some of the business aspects or the design aspects or the human factors aspects, and you can team up with other specialists to work through those aspects, but you have the flexibility of kind of changing the hat you're wearing, if you're motivated to do that. So I'm excited about the roles that I can take on. And then the third one, so we have impact roles, and the third one's people. And I touched on that already a bit, but you're surrounded by just really intelligent, really creative, really interesting people that have different expertise than you do. And so I'm excited with every new project I start. Which new resources can I tap? Which new people could I learn from? Last year we had a project related to icon design. So, we looked within the company and found icon designers to talk to. Can we learn from them about their process? We had another project recently accepted to Kai about visualization design and storytelling, scrollytelling, visual stories on mobile. We reached out to storytellers and journalists who work for mobile. So with each project, I think about what's most exciting to me and who can I learn from, and that gets conceptualized as a project. And maybe I told you I'd give you another specific example. There's a whole project direction that I'm really excited about now. We're looking at readability. And readability is about how the underlying format of the text that you're reading, how that can make that text legible to you. And what we're finding out is how personalized this is. So if I change the font type or size or the spacing between the characters and the lines, I can actually make you a more efficient reader, which is a really cool thing. And what we're finding is that this is so individualized that, the format that you're most efficient at reading is a format someone else is maybe not as efficient at reading. And if we could only figure out how to map you to your best format, we could get you to read academic papers so much faster, right? Textbooks so much faster. And this is an initiative that we started 2 years ago. And it's not an Adobe initiative. It's like Adobe mixed with academic partners, and it's a kind of growing, really exciting initiative that, if anyone's excited to learn more about, contact me. We're happy to get more collaborators, more students thinking and working about this, but the impacts are really cool. You could make it easier for children to read. You can make it easier for professionals that rely on reading to read. And that borrows on my understanding of human perception and attention. How do you read, right? And you need to know how the eyes move, just user understanding more broadly, but as applied to reading. And this is maybe a topic I wouldn't have gravitated to automatically within an academic setting if I was, hyper focused on image processing or computer vision. But having entered this space of really collaborative industrial research, I got exposed to it. That was interesting to me. And the roles that I got to explore within that area have been very interesting as well. So I've taken on various project and product management like research roles, which has been very exciting.
Yeah, these are all super exciting. And also that reading project sounds super important too. Yeah, so
societal impact.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah, that's what we hope to achieve with it.
Yeah. So where do you see the future of AI in design in the next 10 years or the next 50 years?
50 years is a very long way out, so who knows what the world will look like then. But let's try to imagine. So 10 years out, I see it more as a collaborative process. So as I mentioned, I don't see it as designers or creatives being displaced, but rather working with higher level tools. So my vision would be you should be able to more naturally communicate with the tools that you work with in order to transfer this idea that you have in your head onto the screen or the paper or whatever final output you need. So be it like by typing or by finding assets or by talking, some of those processes aren't as smooth right now. So you have a design or a conception in your head for what you want to put on the page, right? The page could be digital. And then maybe you're searching Google or you're searching other like repositories and you're finding things that kind of look like what you're thinking about, then you're changing them up. But wouldn't it be cool if you could just say, okay, I envision like, this part will have a texture that looks like this, and maybe, show the texture or find it. And maybe the text here, no, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the, let's resize it. What is the fastest way that you can iterate with a creative tool such that you're spending most of mechanical movements or adjustments. Like that's the future that I find very exciting. And, maybe 50 years, you can just download your ideas directly. Like, here's what I'm thinking about, go, right? Like, go from brain signals directly to design, so you don't have to interface through like hand gestures and voice. But in the meantime, there's like so much still to be done with interpreting voice and hand gestures and at a high level, like intentions people have, and converting it into physical assets or virtual assets that they can then manipulate. And can you come close to what the person actually wants? And then there's that, possibilities for learning about the person and personalizing what they're doing. Presumably, if you're an AI that's tailored to your designer, you get a better sense of what they mean when they do this hand gesture, right? Or when they're talking about that texture that I saw the other day, like I want to use it here. So context aware AI is going to be relevant there as well. So I think that's a very exciting future. And it, not just for creatives, as a student, you might have ideas brewing and you just want to kind of drop them in, right? You want to figure out where in the World Wide Web of ideas and concepts and code can I borrow something that most matches my idea of it, right? And right now you have to take your ideas, distill them into like searchable concepts, and those better be distinct enough searchable concepts, the right keywords that you can find what you're looking for. But I think we're moving in the direction of having more natural conversations and maybe being able to search in a smarter way and finding exactly what you're thinking about, tailored to you as well. That's I think that's the future, hopefully.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like I want to be able to like kind of use my brain and just kind of go like, okay, I'm thinking about this, and then like not go through the struggle of like not being able to find like the icon or the image, or not wanting to like put up all the work to design this icon or something like that I want. So this is super cool to think about.
And people right now are like, I have some colleagues who speak their papers, right? And there's speech to text, and they're already finding that increases their efficiency. Speech to text is still not perfect, and it's not good at filtering out, your thinking process and all your and like figuring out where to put punctuation. So it's still not fully smooth, but already you can see technology being used to increase someone's efficiency. So if they speak faster than they type, then you eliminate that barrier. And similarly, if you think faster than you search, that barrier should also be eliminated, but it'll be a harder one.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah. So switching gears, so could you talk a little bit more about your trajectory and how you got into ML?
Sure. So I think the trajectory I had is similar to maybe others that you would have spoken to or will speak to, which is if you're interested in human behavior, the mind, psychology, neuroscience, cognitive science, and you happen to also have CS skills or to develop them, then it naturally leads you to artificial intelligence and to machine learning. So that's what happened to me. And I end up kind of integrating ideas from those fields together. And if you think about it, despite a lot of talk of machine learning being like a black box, there's something very beautifully intuitive about it. It doesn't go much beyond the data. It's really learning correlations. You hear that a lot, but it's learning correlations at different levels. So if it's learning higher order correlations, it's going to seem smarter, but really it's pulling things that it's seen before and maybe recombining it in some way. And how it recombines it, that's where maybe creativity emerges. But it's very similar to human behavior. So I was drawn to psychology from as far as I can remember, maybe sometime in high school. And I thought human behavior is so exciting, like trying to unpack it and understand, like, why do people say what they do? Why do they act a certain way? And it's also kind of data driven, right? Like if you knew their full experience, potentially you'd be able to explain why in certain situations they behave a certain way, right? They act in response to what they've seen before. They act in response to their, so their intuitions and their emotions are coming from their experience. And that's very much the same thing with machine learning. So I find it very exciting to think about, how to understand what a machine learning system is thinking about or computing or predicting from the perspective of what is its experience, what has it seen before, analogous to humans, right? What have those humans seen before, and why are they saying what they're saying when you present them with something? So yeah, basically, my inclination towards machine learning is due to my inclination towards humans and human behavior and psychology. But with powerful computational tools that maybe you can prod more than you can prod the human brain.
Yeah, definitely. Like psychology is a really great way to learn more about how the mind works, and then it's like really essential for like developing models. Yeah.
Yeah, before it could be considered different fields, but I think now more and more people are realizing that there's many ideas that transfer over, and I think it's quite natural. Yeah, that it's not different fields that are being interwoven. It's really like the same ideas, just in different conceptualizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So for students who are interested in learning more about machine learning and pursuing work in the field, do you have any thoughts on whether students should start on the theory side or begin with the applied project and fill in the gaps, or some combo of both?
Well, I personally really like project-based learning, because I think if you engage with a project, and as you're doing it, you figure out what you need to know, and then you go and you learn it, and then you apply it, you'll be much more motivated throughout to complete the project, and you'll pick up like the most relevant skills. Of course, that means you need to have a wide enough sampling of projects such that you pick up a broad enough set of skills. But I think that's possible. Theory is very important, but I think you should learn theory when you see a need for it yourself, right? You might be able to cultivate internal motivation just to get through the theory in order to be able to apply it appropriately. But I think if you haven't dabbled in the applications, you're not, you might have difficulty making those links or understanding how that could be used. I think you'll appreciate the theory much more once you know what it drives. And in terms of getting into the area, I mean, there's tons of resources. You make some of them available on your website. But doing internships, that's a great way to get exposed to project-based learning. That is project-based learning, but you can do that in courses as well. There's enough resources on the web that you can do your own project-based learning. I'm not even talking about just Kaggle competitions. I'm talking about, you have an idea, your friend is doing something. Can you automate it for them, right? There's many creative things you could try to do. If you like scrapbooking, can you think about the kind of machine learning or AI that would help you lay the scrapbook out? Think about your hobbies and how you can turn those into ML-like projects to get you excited and to get you to pick up the skills that you want.
Yeah, these are all really great suggestions. So finally, do you have any advice for younger students interested in the field?
Yeah, well, I think my take, it's kind of my philosophy. Maybe some would argue with it, but my philosophy has been, once you have kind of a base core education, then do what's most rewarding to you. Do what you like to do most, because if you do, then the careers that will open up to you will be ones where you get to do more of that, because you're uniquely suited for it, because that's what you've been doing all along. So once you have once a job becomes available in that space, you will know how to do it and you will find it rewarding. So throughout my PhD, I worked on projects and problems that were just really exciting to me. I didn't do them because I felt like I needed to do them for something. I didn't have a plan for, this is the particular place where I want to end up. I was just kind of immersed in the exciting problems, and I picked the ones that were, that I just naturally gravitated towards. And they happened to be in the interdisciplinary space. They were some combination of vision and HCI and graphic design. And so I jumped around a bit, but in the end, I landed a position where I get to jump around a bit. And that's what I find most rewarding. I spent the number of hours that I wanted to on things, and I end up spending the same number of hours now. So the kinds of experience that I got is very much the kinds of experience that I got very much motivates the next steps in my life, right? The natural career steps, they follow from what I did before that. So again, I'm not like working for particular goals. I am working to kind of enhance constantly the space of problems that I'm looking at, the types of people I'm communicating with, and then the level of impact that I'm trying to achieve. And I'm constantly like moving along all those fronts, and that's opening up new opportunities for me. So I think students do a lot of stressing over, okay, what do I need to do? Learn as much as you can, but also learn in the directions that keep you the most motivated. And that's what's going to keep you running, like people talk about the PhD, even undergrad, it's this marathon. You need to keep running. You need to keep having the energy. So do what excites you most. And I'm also a huge proponent of PhD programs. So do a PhD because I think it'll let you work on these high level, really creative, really intellectually stimulating problems as well. And it'll keep your freedom to do those.
Yeah, these are all like really great points. And I definitely do agree that a lot of students sometimes just stress over like about getting like some certain goal done. And yeah, this is definitely a great suggestion. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming today. And we really enjoyed having you and hearing more about your story. So thank you.
Great. Good luck to everyone.